What's up guys, Angus here from Makers Muse. I've been requested quite a few times to run through the Up software because I mention it all the time. For some of you who may not know, I have an Up Mini myself, and actually I have two of them, and I love them. And if you have an Up brand machine, you need to use the Up software. It's a proprietary bit of software to run the Up printers. You can't run any other slicers, and you can't use this to run any other printers. That's just how it is. So the Up software is probably one of the easiest on the market to use, but there is a few things that are very good and a few things that are less than good in the software. So I'm going to run through pretty much everything. It's a very thorough walkthrough, as well as some tips and tricks I've picked up along the way to improve the experience. So starting off from the top, you have File, 3D Print, Edit, View, Tools, and Help. So some of these buttons are then duplicated with easy access icons. For example, Open is the same as File Open, and you can also access recently viewed STL files. In terms of import options, you have STL, or the Up formats, which are UP3 or UPP. I never ever use the Up import formats. They're like a hobbled STL, or possibly if you want to preserve printing parameters, you can use the UP3 format, but again, I never ever use them. But they're there if you possibly want to. When you're importing files, you have the option to select multiple ones at once, holding down the Shift or Control key. I am obviously using Windows. If you're using Mac, the software for Mac looks very different, but the actual functionality is much the same. So I'm just going to grab a few different files, holding Shift and Open. When you bring files into the Up software, it will automatically try to place them on your print bed. So you notice my print bed's quite small because I'm using an Up Mini. When you plug in an Up box, for example, the print bed will scale bigger to suit that much bigger print volume. So the most useful tool in the Up software would be the Place tool. This will automatically try to arrange the items on the print bed, but it is a little bit dumb in regards to it being based off bounding box, not actual print shape. So, for example, this claw here is not letting me arrange the prints onto the print bed. They're too big. So I might just unload this, right-click and unload Scorpion Claw, and try again. And you notice it arranges them very nicely. So most of the time, if you're printing just small things, you can use the Place tool, and you can literally go from here straight to printing. But say, for example, you wanted to print more things. So you wanted to print, let's say I had two of these. What I did just then was a duplicate. I right-clicked and inserted some copies. So now with these shapes, you'll notice when I hit place, it's too big for the print bed. This is where your hotkeys come in handy. So when you hold down Control and click and drag a shape, it's pink when it's selected, it will move it around on the bed plane, which is what we want. So we can hold down Control and move the shapes closer. I can move this one closer, for example, almost touching. You could almost have them touching, but not quite. I can move this closer. I can move this closer. Almost. I'm almost there, but I might need to rotate this one. So let's have a look at the options for rotation. So here in the top menu, we have Move, Rotate, and Scale. Move is completely useless. I really wouldn't bother with it. It's what you do with the control hotkey, except just even more tedious. But rotate is very handy. So here we click rotate, and 90 degrees is the default rotation, but you can change it or you can enter any number you want. And you can rotate it along the different axes. So let's rotate it around the Z axis, which will spin it 90 degrees. And now I can hold Control and move this again. So move it nice and close. Might move this a little bit closer here. And that looks pretty good. So, word of warning here. Now I've done all this, if I hit place, it will undo all of our hard work. So don't press that. Instead, what we want to do is go into Edit and Merge. So merging has combined all these shapes into one now. So if I hit place, they're now all combined. So the latest Up software has these strange colors that pop up underneath your shape. I honestly don't know what they mean. I think it's to do with it thinking it's too big and might start warping or something along those lines. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so here we have our merged shape, and this is ready to print. So with your printer, you may have it plugged in and not initialized. Did you know you can actually initialize your 3D printer through the Up software? Well, you can. You go to 3D print and initialize. And that's it starting up. So the Up printers, with probably the exception of the Up box, don't really have any interface options on the machine itself. It's all controlled via the software. So to do this, you need to go to the maintenance option under 3D print and maintenance. So the maintenance window lets you control everything you need on your printer. You have extrude, which will start pushing filament through the hot end, withdraw, which will pull out the filament, and new spool, which is telling the printer you're adding a new spool of filament. For example, you might add a new roll of PLA or a new roll of ABS. The Up software is quite limited in its ability to change temperatures of different materials. You're really only locked down to ABS or PLA. You can't really do anything else without an Up hack, which is a subject for another video. So it's actually also worth noting that the Up printers are dumb in regards to if the filament does run out, it's not going to know. So the spool option saying 500 grams, it will try to keep track of this every time you send a print to it. But if you cancel a print or something goes wrong with it and you turn it off, it doesn't really know. So you might get a message saying, oh, I've run out of filament. Would you like to continue? Yes or no? I tend to just hit, new filament just to stop that ever turning up and ever annoying me, because it's kind of a flawed system. But anyway. Then you have various control options. So if you're doing your platform leveling or setting your nozzle height, you'll use these to move the head around the platform. And you have the option to table heat for an hour. So when you're printing ABS, it's important the bed's very hot. So you want to preheat for at least 10 minutes, I'd say, before printing. And this is especially important on bigger print areas like the Up box. You want to make sure that chamber's nice and toasty before you start printing large ABS prints. And a few other things under the 3D print menu. If you have multiple printers, lucky you can have them all plugged into the same PC now, and you can select between them, which is really nice. Before you had to unplug the USBs, which was tedious. You also have setup, which shows you your settings for printing. You access this when you go to print anyway, so I'm just going to close that for now. And then you have various calibrate options. So the Up box and the Up Plus 2 has auto level and nozzle height detects options, which are automatic. These will only be visible when you have the right cable plugged in, and I have an Up Mini, so I can't really demonstrate that, but it's there if you need to. And you have the platform calibrate, which is a really hacky way of manually offsetting badly aligned print beds on the Up Mini. Honestly, I don't use this on my machine, but if you have a very badly aligned print bed, you may need to do this on your Up Mini. It's really just them trying to get around bad manufacturing. But yeah, that's there if you have to use it. And then there is calibration. So you can print the calibration print, which is in the Up folder. And you can measure and adjust, and your printer will adjust to suit. So you can actually fine-tune your printer quite a fair amount if you're suffering any of these issues. For example, if vertical columns aren't actually vertical, you can start compensating for that. So I've already shown you how to use the rotate icon, but I'll also show you how to use scale. So scale is under the edit menu as well, but I don't know why you'd ever access it from there. And scaling is by a factor. So 1 is 100% scale, 0.5 is 50% obviously, and 2 is 200%. And you can enter any medium between that. It's also important to note that with the scaling, you can't enter, I want you to make it this size. Like, I want you to scale up to 100 mil or whatever. You can't do it that way in the Up software. It's a bit limited to just sort of entering 50% or 200% scale or a fraction thereof. So if you need something to be scaled to a certain degree that's not a standard 2 or 3 times or whatever, you might want to do it in something like Mesh Mixer and then bring it into the Up software, because you can't really get it exact easily in the Up software. You also can non-linearly scale, which is something not many people know. So for example, 2, instead of hitting the scale option, which will scale everything by 2, I can hit, for example, the Z option, which will scale non-linearly in the Z by 2. So now I have some really wide claws. And something that's really limiting in the Up software, there's no undo. So Control Z doesn't do anything. You're screwed. So I have to enter 0.5 and then do it again to return it to normal. And this applies for everything. So if I accidentally rotate this around by holding Alt and spinning it, which is not handy at all. I can't undo that. So that's one major disadvantage of the Up software, but it's just something as you use it, you'll just get used to trying not to do. So I'm just going to unload this, unload all, and bring in another file. Let's bring in this, whatever that is. Wow, okay, that's pretty cool. So you might be thinking, okay, I have a file, I want to print it, how long is it going to take? Well, lucky you, the 3D print option has a print preview. So in the Up software, you can choose a print preview, and you can change all the settings in this that you would do normally for a print, but it just won't send it to the printer. So let's run through these. Unsolid model. This will tick automatically when there's something wrong with your file. If there's a hole in the mesh or there's something wrong with it, it will tick. The actual exact meaning of it, I'm not exactly sure on, but it will try to print this model to the best of its ability if there's errors in it. Generally speaking, if that's ticked, I will go back and try to fix my model so it doesn't end up getting automatically ticked. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's all I can say on that. No raft, pretty self-explanatory. A raft is the platform underneath the print before you start printing. With the Up machines, you have the perforated platforms that you don't want that finish on the bottom of your print, so it makes a raft. If you want to print raftless, you might put something like build tack on, and in that case you will tick no raft because you don't want a raft. Quality. This pretty much determines the speed of the print. So you have normal, fast, or fine. If you have an Up box, you also have turbo mode, which is super, super fast. But it just determines how fast the machine runs. So fast is normally like no problem at all. Turbo is pretty crazy if you've got an Up box, it's lots of fun. But if you're printing something very delicate, you may want to go with fine, and that's because the platform is moving back and forth, and you don't want to shake it free. Then you have the option to heat the platform after finishing. That's if you're doing like, batch production, printing something, then printing again. You might tell it to just keep the heat up. Again, something I never ever use. And then you have the ability to pause at certain heights. So this is by millimeters, so I could say pause at 12 millimeters high, and then pause at 20 millimeters high. So the machine will wait for you to come back, and this is if you want to change colors. So if you want to go from like black to red to something, and have those layers in your single print, you can do that now using this option, which is pretty handy. And then you want to go to preferences, and this shows you in far more depth the different options to change for your 3D print. Z resolution is the most noticeable difference in quality. This is how high each layer is. So with the Up Mini, without any hacks, 0.2 is the lowest you can go, and 0.35 is the highest. 0.2, to be honest, 0.2 at a fine setting on a nice high polygon 3D print looks amazing. Like the actual quality you get out of the print will look really good. I rarely have to go any lower than 0.2 on any machine, let alone the Up Mini. 0.3 is really fast and probably a bit too low resolution. 0.25 is a good medium setting, I would say. With the Up Plus, you can go down to 0.15, which again looks a little bit nicer. And with the hack, you can go down to 0.1 if you want. Also, the Up box lets you go down to 0.1. Very much, you're getting down to diminishing returns at that level. It takes twice as long as 0.2, and then also you're going to get the chance of failures and stuff going through the roof because you've got double the layer heights. Anyway, then we have fill. So fill determines how dense your part is. I rarely print on anything except the lightest honeycomb. So, this got some sort of graphical interface. That's the densest you can go on the Up machines. It's still not 100%. There's still air between the honeycombing, but it's pretty close. And yeah, so this is the lightest. And then shell is nothing inside. It's just an outside perimeter. And surface is a completely useless setting, which will cut the top and bottom out of a shape. So imagine if you have a tall cylinder, it will turn it into a tall tube, basically. I think they were trying to go with a vase style setting there, and they completely missed the point of what a vase setting is meant to do, aka have a base. But anyway, I always print on this almost hollow setting unless I need strength. Then you have surface. So this is pretty important. This is how many layers are on the outside perimeter. 2 is the lowest you can go, and 6 is the highest. 6 is ridiculous. I don't know why I had default on 6. I would say 3 is a good medium setting. That's 3 outlines on each face, basically. Support, I would never change these from defaults. I don't know why you would, but you can make it denser. And then the support angle. This is pretty important. So if you have 10 degrees, that's the lowest you can go on the up printers. You cannot turn support off. You can't do it. It won't let you. And I think this is their attempt to make the machines foolproof, but it can be a little bit frustrating if you're trying to print something that's designed to not need support. So 10 degrees is the lowest you can go. It will still fill holes with a tiny bit of support, but it's easy to remove. And then you can go all the way up to 80, which is ridiculous. If you're printing something really detailed, 45 is the way to go if you need that high amount of support, but again, 10 degrees is usually fine for most things. Stable support is another type of support which is harder to pull away, but a little bit stronger, aka the name stable support. You might want to do this if you're printing something that has a very far extended detail, like off in a corner, and it's going to have to build a support all the way up to that point. Stable support might be what you need, but otherwise, I tend to have that just turned off, and you can name your printer. Like that. So we've got our settings, we're happy with that, and we can click OK. So this is not sending it to the printer, it's just doing a print preview, but it will preserve the settings we just changed, so when I go to print, I don't have to really go through all that again. You can see the up software slices pretty quickly. It's not phenomenally fast, but it's not too bad. And it's saying that on a fine setting, it's going to use 75 grams and take 9.5 hours. Yeah, that's quite a lot of time. So we can go back and say print preview. Okay, actually, I want to go at 0.25, and I want you to go fast. I think this model is stuffed. That's why it's saying unsolid models being ticked. I think there's something wrong with it. If you see any red in your file, again, that's a really bad sign. It means there's serious errors. So if you see red in your file in the up software, go fix it. It's not going to work properly. And it's dropped the time down from 9.5 hours to just about 5 hours, and the material quantity has actually gone up slightly, which is interesting. But the time difference is quite nice. So if I was printing this, I would probably end up going fast, because I'm sure it would be fine. This is an interesting thing. I think it's a bit of a bug, but something to note, the up software doesn't show you a G-code preview. You cannot preview what the support's going to look like. You can't preview what the print's going to look like. It doesn't let you do it, which is not very good for this sort of day and age. Most slicers now let you preview G-code. But for some reason, it lets you preview where the raft's going to be on that first layer, which is actually the G-code path that it's going to be tracing, which is really interesting. I'm not sure why it does that. You'd think if it's showing you that, it would be able to show you the G-code all the way up, but it doesn't. It only shows you that first layer. Unless I'm missing something, I really don't think you can see the G-code at the moment, but this is sort of handy if you're trying to determine where the support's going to start. And also, worth noting, if you're printing something at 120 millimeters across on an Up Mini, it's probably not going to let you print it because the raft is usually bigger than the part, so the raft might be 125 millimeters, which is outside the bounding box. So yeah, a few things on hotkeys finally. If you happen to do something like this, and you've lost your part completely, hit A on the keyboard. A will automatically center the view back to default. Super handy. I have lost my part many times doing that, zooming out by accident, just sort of going, and then you just completely lose it. A fixes everything. You can do that in the fit menu. So you can do, fit is A, different views, top, bottom, side, ISO. But I find the hotkeys much easier to use. So that's pretty much it. You can change some colors I don't know why you'd bother. You can do a few different things with preheating, but again, the 1 hour preheat and the maintenance is better. And you can update the ROM if you happen to have a really old 3D printer, which is unlikely these days. And under the help menu, you can check which version you have. So this is 2.15, I believe it's the latest. And my Up Mini is running v3.03 with v6.06, which again, I think is the latest for the Up Minis. So yeah, a little bit tedious to go through the software. As you can see, it's simple to use, but at the same time, it's a little bit clunky to do things. You can't select things by hitting enter. Usually it's like, I change this to 1 or 2 and then enter, but nothing happens. People are used to things happening when you hit enter. You actually have to then go and click the icon. It's gone red now because it's obviously too big. But it's just something you get used to using the up software. But overall, it's actually quite good and quite simple to use. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to shoot them through. Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you again soon here on Makers Muse. Bye, guys.